Good morning. My name is Linda Leibel, and I serve as president of the Board of Trustees of the Unitarian Universalist Church. Thanks for joining us today. It's wonderful to see all of you out there. We welcome everyone. Yay! We welcome everyone joining us via live stream as well. Weather permitting, we will continue to offer in-person outdoor services on the first and third Sunday of April and May. All services will also be live streamed. We'll follow all public health protocols to keep everyone safe. Please bring a chair, wear a mask, and social distance. This is a wonderful way to celebrate the arrival of spring. Thanks to everyone who's worked so hard to make this possible. Allow me to share a few announcements in the life of the church. We enjoyed a moving presentation on the history of the South Side this February by the Honorable Brenda Lee Price. In her presentation, she mentioned the sale of calendars representing the history to benefit the Southside Heritage and Preservation Committee. Our own Ruth Stanton back there has these for sale when we gather in person, and the cost is $25. So please buy one to support the vital work of preserving the rich history of the neighborhood in which we are privileged to be a part of. The South Converse Neighborhood Cleanup, Saturday, March 27th. Come join with the neighbors to make the neighborhood look great. It's between 9 and 11 o'clock in the morning, and meet at the bottom of the hill on the South Converse Street, not far from the church. Bring the gloves and the grabbers, and the bags are provided. Come on by even if you can't stay the whole time. This month we're sharing the workshop entitled Don't Fear the Reaper, an exploration of modern death. It's presented by Gary Snipes and Lisa Mowry. This presentation will provide clear and simple recommendations to realize a good death when our time has come, and to be able to support others in their dying process. An opportunity for dialogue will be an important part of this course so that we can all learn from each other. This workshop will take place Wednesday from 12 to 1:15 via Zoom until April 21st. Hey, and our annual auction is going to be held Sunday, April 18th. Outdoors, after the service, right here in the backyard at UUCS. Mark your calendars and see the happenings for more details. I want to thank Brandon Carter. Brandon, stand up. Stand up. He and a group of individuals have done a bang-up job on our annual fund campaign. I think, what are we up to, $230,000, Brandon? $232. Thank you. What an amazing congregation this is, especially in times like these. We need each other. Thanks for being the congregation that cares. Thanks for being part of this congregation today.
Good morning. Yeah, I want to, Linda has promised us that spring is coming. I want to thank you for being here. This is an unbelievable gathering of people on a very cold March morning. I remember February being balmy, and here we are. Thank you so much for being people of such heart and courage and, frankly, foolishness. And while I'm thanking the people who are here for giving so much with such little reason to be part of this congregation, I want to thank the people who had the good sense not to come today, who are part of our virtual congregation, because you are as much a part of this as the people who are here present. I was just talking with one of our members before the service about the unbelievable work this congregation has done all year long. There's too much to tell in any one sitting, no matter how long the sitting is and how many times we fill our cup. What this congregation has done is unbelievable. The work we've done, and also the accuracy, the timing with which we've done it. I just want to say again, at the risk of saying it too much, thank you. And I mean that for today. Thank you for being people who love the earth and who love being out in the world, even when it's uncomfortable. who love the feel of the ground and the smell of spring opening, and even the cold of the wind moving among us. Thank you for being people who feel that and value it, and who love each other, who want to be together in community, even when it is uncomfortable, literally and metaphorically. Thank you for caring about each other. All month, we're talking about the divine feminine, reflecting on these stories and these images and these practices, these traditions that have been a part of human culture all around the world for tens of thousands of years. Whether we believe in the divine feminine or not, whether that's part of our own personal practice, we've seen how important she is in our congregation. And we've thought about how important she is in our world, in human society. And we saw that again this week. We saw 8 people murdered in Atlanta, 7 women. And only last Sunday, we reflected together on the violence of patriarchy and the presumption of men to create a world in which men have the say, men make the rules, men can dominate physically, materially, emotionally, sexually, spiritually. And when men don't get their way, they can exact a price of their choosing. What a sick world that is. And it's the world that we live in. The idea that a man would act out his own sexual insecurities and confusion at the cost of 8 people's lives, that somehow that makes sense. It's just sick. It's just a sickness. When we gather in community and care, when we feel the earth beneath our feet and the wind moving over us, the interconnectedness of our being, that is the divine feminine. She is that presence that connects us and moves through us, whether we believe in her or not. That is what her stories tell us. She who gives us life and nurtures us. And we saw last week in the goddess Durga that she comes also with rage, with a power that no one else can muster, to confront the violence of patriarchy and transform it. So I want to read these names of people who were killed this week just down the road from us, barely more than 3 hours away from us. And as I do so, I want to ask you to practice the love and the nurture, the compassion for them that we have heard about. And at the same time, to cultivate that transformative rage that will not stop until the world is livable for every one of us. Let us bring to mind these siblings slain at the intersection of sexism and racism, and patriarchy at the heart of it this week. Delana Ashley Juan, Xiaoji Tan, Dao Yu Fang, Soon Chung Park, Hyun Jung Grant, Sooncha Kim, Yong A. Yue. Paul Andre Michaels. And one more person who was wounded but still survives. Elcius R. Hernandez Ortiz. These are individual lives of inherent worth and dignity. And they are lives that we are connected to in the network of all being. And we are here to do the work of care and community, of nurture and loving kindness and rage, the work of the goddess, whether we believe in her or not, for the transformation of our world. So let me say again, whether you are here in person or here virtually, thank you for showing up to do this work again today.
In 1991, during a house arrest that lasted almost 20 years, human rights icon and leader of Myanmar's pro-democracy movement, Aung San Suu Kyi, wrote her groundbreaking essay, Freedom from Fear. Saints, it has been said, are the sinners who go on trying. So free people are the oppressed who go on trying and who, in the process, make themselves fit to bear their responsibilities and to uphold the disciplines which will maintain a free society. Among the basic freedoms to which people aspire, that their lives might be full and uncramped, freedom from fear stands out both as a means and an end. A people who would build a nation in which strong democratic institutions are firmly established as a guarantee against state-induced power must first learn to liberate their own minds from apathy and fear. Fearlessness may be a gift, but perhaps more precious is the courage acquired through endeavour, courage that comes from cultivating the habit of refusing to let fear dictate one's actions, courage that could be described as grace under pressure, grace which is renewed repeatedly in the face of harsh, unremitting pressure. Within a system which denies the existence of basic human rights, fear tends to be the order of the day. Fear of imprisonment, fear of torture, fear of death, fear of losing friends, family, property, or means of livelihood, fear of poverty, fear of isolation, fear of failure. A most insidious form of fear is that which masquerades as common sense or even wisdom, condemning as foolish, reckless, insignificant, or futile the small daily acts of courage which help to preserve people's self-respect and inherent human dignity. It is not easy for a people conditioned by fear under the iron rule of the principle that might is right to free themselves from the enervating miasma of fear. Yet even under the most crushing state machinery, courage rises up again and again, for fear is not the natural state of civilized people.
I'm coming home with world was meant for me. Don't bury me. I wish I was a nomad, an Indian or a saint. The edge of death would disappear, leave me nothing left to take. I wish I was a nomad, an Indian or a saint. Give me walking shoes, feathered arms, and a key to heaven's gate. Ah, this world falls on me, dreams of immortality. Everywhere I turn, all the beauty just keeps shaking me. I'm running to the end of the earth. I'm swimming to the edge of the sea. I'm laughing 'cause I'm under a starry sky. This world was meant for me. I've got hopes of immortality.
Thanks, Aaron. Our covenant, written by this congregation, provides the practical guidance of how we can live out our beliefs together in our church community and also in our church neighborhood, our city, and the wider world. These words, powerful when they were written, continue to gain strength as we strive to manifest their meaning in our congregation's work. The words are in the order of service and also in the order of service digitally underneath the live stream. Let us join our voices and speak the truth of our covenant. We are a people of faith and hope. Together we covenant to strive to become our better selves, to honor both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to respond to systems of violence and oppression with the power of a love beyond belief. And now we come to a part of our service where, for those of who are present, we invite you to come forward in person and place a stone or a shell in our rippling bowl. These symbolize sharing joys or concerns, because we find that concerns that are shared are lessened and joys shared are multiplied. And I'm going to put a stone and a shell into the bowl to represent joys and concerns of our congregation who's participating digitally. Just before that, just to let you, so we only have to make one trip forward, we do have an offering basket on our tables up front. And we invite you to place a gift in the offering basket. We are very generous people, and we bring our gifts in many ways. Some of it is physical treasure, but other is talents, and I'm always just amazed that we have our videographer, our sound folks that came extra early so that we could get all this set up, the folks on buildings and grounds who keep our outside of our church looking wonderful and the inside too, and our social justice team, which has done so much this year, our covenant groups, our board of directors. We have a great professional staff, and so many more people have done things for this congregation. So many of us give through virtual platforms, and so if you're not dropping off a gift today, please do visit our website at www.uucs.org, and below this live stream you'll find a button that says help, and that'll link you to many ways you can share your gifts of talent and treasures. So you're welcome to come forward at this time. Sister of the evening starlight, in the falling shadows stay. Here among us till the firelight of tomorrow's dawning day. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning day. Mother of the generations, in whose love all life is built, everlasting celebrations bring our labor safe to birth. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning earth. Goddess of all time's progression, stand with us when we engage. Hearts and hands to end oppression, writing history's mirror page. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning age.
Hello. So I know it's not on your program, but that's because I got my shot yesterday and I wasn't sure how I would feel. But Scott asked me if I felt well enough if I would do an invocation for us today, which I'm very thrilled and happy to do. Great Goddess, in all of your forms, surround us, support us, expand us, bring us and our world back into balance. Be with us as Kuan Yin, the Buddhist goddess of compassion, filling us with a deep, uncompromising compassion for all of creation. Be with us, Sophia, the Judeo-Christian goddess who breathed life into the universe. Please breathe wisdom into each of us, a wisdom beyond that which we have grasped until now. Be with us as Freya, the Norse goddess of war, who teaches us when it is time to surrender, when it is time to retreat, when it is time to do those things so that we can finally heal, and when it is time to fight. Be with us as Pele, the Hawaiian volcano goddess. Infuse us with passion and fire, helping us to erupt and decimate all that impedes us in our world. Be with us as Gulu, the Babylonian goddess of healing. Heal us and heal our world from all the harm that we ourselves have done, in part through disowning you. Be with us as Hecate, the Greek crone goddess of magic and the in-between. Ignite the magic that lives within the heart of each of us, and help each of us find more and more comfort being in the space that is unknown. Be with us as Kali, the Hindu goddess of death and creation. Bring us your fierceness, your courage, your strength, and your grit, so that we can destroy what must be destroyed for a new world to be born. And finally, be with us as the divine Earth Mother, and bring us and all of your creation into wholeness. So be it.
I want to thank Mary and Gail Stevenson, and Fred Stoll, Mel Frishy, for what they've shared in each service about what the Goddess means in their lives, the ways that she has come to them and guided them and been within them. And many more people who have sat with me and shared stories with me over this month, who have not been in front of a microphone, but whose stories are very much a part of what we're doing this month. Very grateful. Share silence with me. Goddess at the Crossroads. More than 20 years ago now, I was an undergraduate student. I had the chance to travel to Thailand for a month. I was working with a Buddhist AIDS hospice in northern Thailand in the city of Chiang Mai, which approaches the border with Myanmar, Burma. It's a Buddhist culture. There are Buddhist temples everywhere. The people I was with were sort of renegade Buddhist monks who had broken from the monarchic, institutional, Buddhist monastic system in order to do grassroots community work. They were sort of like Buddhist UUs in Thailand. People who could teach us a lot and who we would love being with. And while I was there in that city, traveling and learning and volunteering, eating, the food's just unbelievable and so beautiful. There was an image that I saw everywhere. Surely there was the image of the Buddha in that culture, temples everywhere, sort of like churches on every corner in Spartanburg. But there was another image, an image of a woman on the cover of books, on posters written in Thai, posters written in Burmese, posters written in English, posters written in German, everywhere in people's homes, on doors, on street sides, and people talking about this woman. It was striking to see her physical presentation on the covers of these books, on these posters, and how much she recalled the images in the temples. A person of tremendous personal presence, power, whose physical aspect commanded a kind of attention and respect, a powerful elegance. This was the Burmese human rights activist Aung San Suu Kyi, who had been under house arrest then for almost a decade because of her advocacy for her people against the military junta that had ruled Burma or Myanmar. The country goes by both names. For then almost 50 years. Powerful presence everywhere. So reminiscent of the images of the divine throughout that culture. How do we embody the divine feminine? How do we make her story real? Whether we believe in her or not, how do we live what she would teach us? It seems to me that's the question that religion always asks of us. Not do we believe in it, but how do we live? How do we live? There are very important warnings about the efforts that we make, and particularly that men make, to bring the divine feminine to life. We talked about the goddess Durga last week. Seems like a month. Last week. There's a classic film by the Bengali filmmaker Satyajit Roy. It's a wonderful film. You can find it in the Criterion Collection. I urge you to watch it, but you need to know this is not a relaxing movie. It's just called Devi, the goddess. And it tells the story of a man, the patriarch of a family, who is devoted to the goddess Durga in Bengal, in East India, where her worship is so pervasive. And through a dream one night, he comes to believe that it has been revealed to him that his daughter-in-law now embodies the goddess. Seems like that should be honorific, but it is the opposite. She becomes imprisoned in his life of devotion until the entire family is consumed by his religious insanity. And you can imagine the cost to the woman who has become objectified, not just idealized, but idolized as the goddess without any say herself. It is a powerful film, a classic of world cinema. But get yourself ready before you watch it. In her enormous work on Hindu traditions, the internationally famous scholar Wendy Doniger writes about the goddess in all of her forms throughout the history of the Indian subcontinent and the way she's become known throughout the West, her Hindu forms becoming known throughout the West. And she offers two warnings. So the ways in which we can claim the goddess as our own too quickly without reckoning with who she really is and what her traditions are. She tells the story of two male filmmakers, two male directors. One who made another movie called The Goddess, in which he ascribed to the goddess Kali, another form of the goddess Durga, all of his own meaning without regard for the practices and traditions in India. He did all kinds of travel, all kinds of promotion, all kinds of preparation for the film, and then promptly died before it was finished. And then the filmmaker Stanley Kubrick, whose very well-known film, Eyes Wide Shut, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, keep your eyes wide shut. In which a very famous scene, if you've seen it, I don't need to describe it, and if you hadn't, it's probably best to leave it alone for right now. but a scene that lauds particularly male sexuality at the expense of women, in which chanting of the Bhagavad Gita plays in the background, a total distortion of the meaning of that hymn. And Kubrick also famously died before he had finished making that movie. And Doniger notes in her snarky, learned way, one male director taking on the goddess for himself dies making the film. Another male director taking the whole tradition for himself dies while making a film. Surely, she says, just a coincidence. So I stand here with a fair amount of humility and fear to talk with you today about how do we embody the goddess? How do we take these stories so that they are alive in us? There are a lot of warnings about the ways this doesn't work, the ways devotion becomes idolatry in the disruptive sense, right? Objectifying something for our own purposes and missing the heart, missing the point. You can see on the front of your bulletin there's a map, and on either side there are two images we've worked with this month. The map is of the country Myanmar, or Burma, in Southeast Asia. And you can see that it is bordered to the west by India and Bengal. Prior to the British colonialism and the division of these countries after World War II, these borders were not the same. And so we have a great movement of culture through that western range. And then you can see in the east, in the north, China and Thailand, two paradigmatic Buddhist countries. Countries that are Hindu and Muslim to the west, countries that are Buddhist in the Theravada and Mahayanan traditions in the east. When we worked with Kuan Yin, the Bodhisattva of compassion, the goddess of compassion in Buddhism, and when we worked with Durga, that aspect of the goddess in Hinduism, I wondered, could both of these expressions of the divine be present in one place? Might they both merge, as we've talked about them merging? And in Burma, in that crossroads of cultures, culture from China, culture from Thailand, culture from India, and culture from that area itself, hundreds of indigenous groups from that area, you can find images of Kuan Yin pervasive throughout the culture, and images of Durga, and celebrations of Durga Puja in Myanmar. The images on your bulletin today all come from that country. The image of Kuan Yin, of Avalokiteshvara, actually comes from the throne of the Burmese monarchy, a protector of the monarchy. Myanmar is a crossroads of cultures, of peoples, and therefore of conflict, and a place where these aspects of the goddess herself meet. And into that crossroads, that intersection of colonialism and world war, of patriarchy, of world powers vying for domination, into that crossroads was born a woman. In 1945, at the end of World War II, Aung San Suu Kyi was born to the man who is known as the father of modern Burma, modern Myanmar. Her father was a war hero who led the independence movement of Burma against the British, and then struggled with the Japanese to claim its own independence. This man formed the modern Burmese military, which then led to his own assassination and the overthrow of the early Burmese independent government to military dictatorship. Aung San Suu Kyi grew up outside of the country, schooled first in India at the University of Delhi and then at Oxford, University of Oxford. For most of her early adult life, married, had 2 children, worked for the United Nations. And her native country, Myanmar, this crossroads of cultures and peoples, hundreds of different groups, languages, practices, expressions, a multi-ethnic region divided by colonialism and war, and now patriarchal military dictatorship. In 1988, she returned for a visit. And at that moment, there was a student uprising against the military junta that had been in place for decades. And she stepped forward at a Buddhist temple to speak one day to support the pro-democracy movement. In that one speech, the fame of her birth, the power of her presence, at the crossroads of all of these pressures, cultural and societal and political and economic and militaristic, she was catapulted to leadership. Suddenly the leader of the pro-democracy movement in her native Burma, Myanmar, which earned her 20 years of house arrest. And this woman under house arrest became a human rights icon the world over. She won the Nobel Peace Prize, was given the keys to cities all over the world, won prize after prize after prize for her writing and her advocacy, for her resistance from house arrest. In recent weeks, as a new coup has taken hold of Myanmar, I've listened to commentators and news clips and podcasts about what's happening there. And one commentator in particular, a woman from Myanmar, who works for a Western media outlet, said, "She became to us a goddess. She became to us like a goddess. She was who we aspired to be. In her was all of our hope." And that's what I saw when I was in northern Thailand all those decades ago now. This woman whose image was the hope of the country. That she would embody democracy, that she would embody justice, a divine presence to bless her country, to make everything better, to make it okay. You can imagine what the patriarchal, militaristic junta in charge of Myanmar thought of the power of this one woman's presence. Can you imagine the threat that she posed to them? No wonder they kept her locked in her house for nearly 2 decades. And think about that image, given all we've talked about with patriarchy. The control, the suppression, the threat, the effort to dominate. And think about how ultimately ineffective. Because when you try to hold that power back, of course it surges and grows. Of course that is a fruitless effort. And so finally, only 5 years ago, after another series of protest movements in the country, those who ruled Myanmar decided that they needed to compromise on some level, to strike some kind of deal to alleviate the power that this one woman held. And so they formed a shared government in which she would become the de facto civilian leader of the country, finally realizing the dreams of her people and of the world. But the military would write the Constitution, and it would hold veto power within the parliament, giving people the image of this woman that they had come almost to worship, but retaining control. Think about the pressure. Think about the pressure of her life a woman now entering her 70s, her whole life devoted to this country, to dealing with this repression, to fighting against the patriarchy, and to being lauded as a symbol that no one could ever live up to. And now thrust into position to rule, to be the public face of the country, while the patriarchal system still retained veto power. Imagine the pressure that she was under. Imagine what she faced. Four years ago, when Rohingya Muslims rose up in South Myanmar, the military regime exerted what it has always done: massive, violent power to quell any form of resistance and uprising. Myanmar is this place of multi-ethnic mixing of hundreds of different groups. And the military has fought uprisings, revolutionary groups, subjugated these indigenous groups to foreground the ethno-nationalism of the Burmese people throughout its tenure. And it did that again against the Rohingya Muslims. In the end, more than 750,000 people, almost 1 million people, had to flee their homes to try to find some modicum of safety. Massacre and rape, all the tools of violence available to the regime. And now Aung San Suu Kyi, this human rights icon, this sainted figure, this person seen as a goddess, is the public face of her country. This woman bearing the responsibility of real politics and the unlivable expectation of being divine. And she defended the regime. She defended what was done. And the world reacted in revulsion. What is she doing? Why is she doing this? Why isn't she speaking up for the Rohingya? She was ostracized and criticized the world over. Prizes rescinded, keys of cities taken away, made a pariah on the world stage where before she had been a goddess. And I want us just to think about this for a minute. She should have spoken out. I absolutely believe that she should have. Massacre and rape is wrong. But why is it so easy for us to idolize women as divine and then cast them out with violence when they don't do what we want? Why is it that not only in Myanmar or in Atlanta, but the world over, patriarchy holds sway? Even in those circles that pretend to be moral, that pretend to promote the good of the world, that pretend to be bastions of human rights. Why was it so easy to divinize this woman and to criticize her when she couldn't possibly meet our expectations, rather than to look at ourselves to say, what can we do in this situation? And what have we done through colonialism and through racism and through capitalism to create such pressures in this place that people exact this kind of violence against one another? Why is it so easy for us to do that? To use the goddess and women as our symbols and our targets, rather than to consider what we can do to help? Now, in my estimation, none of this was fair. And in my estimation, Aung San Suu Kyi made a fatal flaw. She was willing to compromise with the patriarchy to try to find a way forward for her country. She was willing to assume too much the sole mantle of leadership. And therefore, the patriarch was able to use it against her. I feel a lot of sympathy, a lot of worry, a lot of praise and disappointment for her leadership. We can feel all those things at once, rather than just one or the other. Many people have said, and what good did it do? This February 1st, after she had won yet another landslide victory in the popular elections of that country, the military junta decided that she had gained too much power. And they once again executed a coup. She is once again under house arrest. The country is once again under military rule, seemingly back where we started. The question we have to ask is, what good was any of it? What has been achieved? What is the power of these divine images and of these stories of the goddess if the small gains made lead to ethnic cleansing and reversion to military dictatorship, collapse of fragile democracies? What does the embodiment of the divine feminine achieve in the world when patriarchy so easily takes back control? Now, it would be logical to ask, why the hell am I talking about all this? What is the point in Spartanburg, South Carolina, of thinking about the collapse of multi-ethnic democracy, the resurgence of ethno-nationalistic, patriarchal, military dictatorship in a country that is literally on the other side of the world? And the answer is that Myanmar holds up a mirror for all of us. We do well to look at the history of that country and to reckon with our own history. Think about the failure of the November elections in Myanmar on February 1st, a popularly elected democratic government that lost power due to military coup. And think about popular elections in our own country last November and an attempted coup 1 month earlier on January 6th in our own capital. Think about the power of patriarchy, not only in that culture, but in our own. So that when 8 people are brutally slaughtered in one of our major cities, our own law enforcement, which I believe is diligently trying to figure out what's going on, quickly separates the clear racism and sexism that fomented those murders, won't consider the intersection of all of those powers and forces. Think about the history of our own country and our repeated failure to be a genuine multi-ethnic democracy because we have systematically suppressed and exacted violence, seized land and massacred, raped hundreds of indigenous groups. Think about how much the history I shared with you of a country half a world away bears exact markers of our own history. Myanmar offers the world a mirror to ask not just what went wrong over there, but what is wrong here, and what can we change? What can we change? Idealized images of the goddess, they don't work. Idolizing women, idolizing the divine feminine, it doesn't work. it falls right back into patriarchal oppression, objectification, and inevitably violence against those women. We see it in our movies. We see it in our media. We see it on the news every day. It doesn't work. So how do we make the divine feminine real, if she's even real? What can she possibly teach us in a world that regresses into violence over and over again? In Atlanta and in Myanmar and all over the place, everywhere. What does the goddess have to teach us? Close your eyes again. As we've done every day this month, close your eyes. Feel the ground under your feet. Feel the wind moving over you. Hear the cars. Hear the dog. Hear the city. Feel the people next to you. Here on this lawn and through the screen. Feel the connection. We've said from the very beginning, this is the presence of the goddess. Not idealized in one of us, but present moving through us, connecting us, the life-giving force that nurtures us and sustains us, that creates a living web, a network of all being. The goddess is alive in Myanmar, not in one woman, but in the movement for democracy that fills the streets, the students and the laborers, the workers who will not stop, who will not stay in their homes, who beat pans to warn each other, and who pull out their smartphones to film each other, who fight against the Facebook blackout that's happened now. The goddess is not one person. She takes forms all over the world. We heard Mary offer that prayer just before I spoke. Idolization, objectification, placing all of our hopes on one person, that is not the goddess. That is a symbol that will disappoint us every time. But her power surging up within us and between us, moving us to create a world that is sustainable and livable for every person, that is her living presence among us. And we do well to ask, not just what can we learn from Myanmar, but how can we join the effort of those unbelievably brave people out in the streets every day to make their world and ours more livable for us all. Don't you wish we could do that for the 8 people who are now dead in Atlanta? Don't you wish we could go back 1 week and just know what we could do to keep them alive, to stop that? And that's what those protesters in Myanmar are saying. They're saying, what can we do to keep one another alive? What can we do to break the patriarchal hold on us? What can we do to break the objectification and the idolization and the oppression so that we create real multi-ethnic democracies in Myanmar and in the United States, everywhere where we have failed to do that? Everywhere we have failed to do it. Our world is not a world of separation. The goddess tells us that our world is a world of connection, of interbeing. And our work, whether we believe in her or not, is to feel that power between us, to feel that power move within us, the power that connects us, power that moves through the ground and over the air in every budding plant this spring and in our small lives. A power to sustain one another. How do we make the goddess real? How do we embody her? Not by conforming to a patriarchal image of what the ideal woman should be. No. by giving ourselves, our lives, to make life possible for every one of us, every day. That is the Goddess alive.
Sticks and stones, battle zones, a single light bulb on a single thread for the black. Sirens wail, the street fails, rose-colored glass begins to age and crack, while the politicians shadow box the power ring. In an endless split decision, never solve anything. From a neighbor's distant land, I heard the strain of a common man. Let it be me, this is not a fighting song. Let it be me, not a wrong for a wrong. Let it be me, if the world is night. Shine my life like a light. Well, the world seems spent, and the president has no good idea who the masses are. Well, I'm one of them, and I'm among friends, trying to see beyond the fences in our own backyards. I've seen the kingdoms blow like ashes in the winds of change, but the power of truth is the fuel for the flame. So the darker the ages get, there's a stronger beacon yet. Let it be me, this is not a fighting song. Let it be me, not a wrong for a wrong. Let it be me, if the world is night. Shine my life like a light, in the kind word you speak, in the turn of the cheek. When your vision stays clear, in the face of your fear, then you see turning out of lights, which is their only power. When we stand like spotlights in a mighty tower, all for one and one for all, then we sing the common call. Let it be me, this is not a fighting song. Let it be me, not a wrong for a wrong. Let it be me, if the world is night. Shine my life like a light.
Everything will be okay. Words from pro-democracy activists in Myanmar in 2021. So, statements from two pro-democracy activists. We know that we can always get shot and killed with live bullets, but there is no meaning to staying alive under the junta, so we choose this dangerous road to escape. Our ultimate goal is to remove the junta system from the roots. From a banner carried by pro-democracy activists referring to ethnic groups in northern and southern Myanmar, massacred and oppressed by the military. We deeply apologize to all Kachin and Rohingya who are under oppression. The slogan on the t-shirt of a 19-year-old pro-democracy activist, killed by the military during a protest in Myanmar. Everything will be okay.
How do we make the goddess live? How do we embody her? I think in Ruth's tears as she read those words, we see Kuan Yin, the goddess of compassion. And as we hear those words, we feel Durga, that rage to transform patriarchal systems that destroy. How do we embody the divine feminine? On your bulletin, there's a link that'll connect you with pro-democracy activists in Myanmar. Choose whether you'll make the goddess live.
Spent time together, and these holy moments give us strength to go down the winding road until we meet again. We have spent time together, and these strength to go down the winding road until we meet again. The new sea turning out of lights, which is their only power, when we stand like spotlights in a mighty tower, all for one and one for all. Then we sing the common call. Let it be me, this is not a fighting song. Let it be me, not a wrong for a wrong. Let it be me, when the world is night. Shine my life like a light.